You're listening to the Cryptid Crew Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Childers. Before we get started, if you've had an encounter or an experience or just something unexplained, click on our link tree in the description and share your encounter. Thank you for listening to the Cryptid Crew Podcast. On this episode of the Cryptid Crew Podcast, I would like to introduce my guest, professor, author, and former wildland firefighter, Jon Billman. Jon, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here, Mark.
Awesome to have you. Our youngest son is a firefighter, so I appreciate what you did as a former wildland firefighter. And how did you get into that profession?
You know, I was just trying to pay my way through college, and so that seems like a long time ago. But I think your son's era of fire, it's gotten exponentially worse since I did it. So, for me, it was just sort of like getting paid to be a Boy Scout. You get to go out in the woods and live in the dirt.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They go through so much training now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Big respect for that.
Right. He's been doing that for about 3 years. Are there any wildfires that stick out to you more than others?
Oh, well, right now, so I'm up here. I live along Lake Superior, and it looks like fog, brown fog, and it's the result of the Canadian wildfires. So Canada is burning, and we're breathing it right now. So.
Right. That's been out of control for a little while, hasn't it?
Yeah. I don't know if they had it under control for a bit, but it's back. So, yeah.
Right. We were in Niagara Falls, maybe the middle of June, and we were on, I guess it was Lake Erie, maybe.
Yeah.
Up there. And we walked out to a lighthouse at the end of the point, but the smog was just terrible.
Yeah.
And we talked to some residents up there, and they were saying that you could see typically just for miles and miles, but it's not so. And that being the case, the Canadian wildfire. So,
yeah.
But yeah, let me know. And if you can, tell the listeners kind of what you're working on now.
Sure. So I more missing entities. I went from missing persons to a missing aircraft. And some of your listeners will have heard of the Kinross incident from 1953, I'm sure. That's what I'm fascinated with. And so, like I mentioned, I live along Lake Superior here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And, everyone has heard of the Edmund Fitzgerald because there's a great song associated with that tragedy from 1975. Your listeners will maybe have been up to speed with the Kinross incident, but most people, including my neighbors here in the UP, have never heard of it. And what happened was in 1953, the heart of the Cold War, there was radar up here in the Keweenaw Peninsula detected a bogey, essentially an unidentified flying object, a UFO, over the middle of Lake Superior, and they scrambled a U.S. Air Force F-89C Scorpion jet out to intercept the UFO and to get some eyeballs on it, to check out what it was, not necessarily shoot it down. Our jet disappeared. And so the odd thing about it was the radar operator watched the blip from the UFO and the blip from our jet merge. And then the only continuing blip was the blip of the UFO. And so no physical evidence of a crash has ever been found. And so that got my attention, and it's turned into an obsession now, basically.
Yeah, that's baffling. Was there any, do you know if what was the last communication to the radio tower?
Yeah, so the last communication was just the radio operator had gave some vector coordinates to the jet, And they were having some problem with some of the radio communications, and that was the last he heard from the jet. But he watched as those two blips merged on the radar.
And they never found any wreckage or any parts.
Not a fuel slick on the water, not a piece of, seat insulation or parachute, nothing at all, nothing physical at all. So, it's Occam's razor would have it that it crashed at the coordinate, somewhere close to that coordinate out in the lake. But I've talked to a lot of experts, and a lot of the Canadians believe that it, the plane made it up into the bush in Canada. And so it's just a real mystery. The Air Force really doesn't know what happened to it either.
Did they also speculate that was during the Cold War too, correct?
Correct, 1953.
Didn't they speculate that it was possible a Russian or enemy attack or fire or something that may have made the jet crash or disappear?
Yeah, it's sort of like the way we view China now. Yeah, there was speculation that they had some kind of a secret means. The suspicion was really, part of my research has been looking at all these different radar installments across the US-Canadian border and even further north into Canada. And the network was just massive, and so, yeah, they were getting ready for any kind of Soviet trickery at the time.
Right. Yeah. Typically, when a jet crashes or some type of aircraft, you're going to leave some debris on top, it seems like. And you had mentioned the oil slick or fuel slick or spot, just like in the Bermuda Triangle mystery. I think it was Flight 19.
Flight 19.
Yes. One of the rescue aircraft that left to go search, the one that went missing as well, it left an oil slick,
Yep.
if I'm not mistaken, on top of the surface. And I'm not sure about debris with that one, but
I think am I right, Mark? That one exploded in the air, I think.
okay. Yes, I believe you are right about that.
Yeah, and that wasn't.
I think that was witnessed.
Yeah. What a strange case. That'd make a great podcast episode. That's just a bottomless cup of coffee for mystery. That Flight 19. Man, some people are equating the Kinross incident with that episode as well. There were two airmen aboard the F-89 up here over Lake Superior. There was a pilot and a radar observer, Lieutenant Gene Moncla and Lieutenant Robert Wilson, who was the radar observer, disappeared. And it was really hard on the families because they just don't have many answers to what happened.
Right. What was the final, I guess, scenario, or not scenario, the final conclusion for the armed forces, or was it the Air Force?
Yes, right.
Okay, yes, for the Air Force on that case.
Yeah, so the Air Force told after the inquiries and the accident board investigated, they told the family a couple of things. One of them was that it exploded at altitude in the air, which is possible. I don't think it's likely. I think some debris would have been found. And the other thing was that it crashed. The pilot got disoriented and it crashed into the lake, which is quite possible. That is quite possible. But about that time, a UFO writer by the name of Donald Kehoe, who went on to become a bestseller with his UFO books, in 1955, he wrote a book called The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, and he talks at some length about the Kinross incident. And he thinks that was a bellwether in sort of the early Project Blue Book and UFO annals in the country's UFO history.
Right. There's a lot of sightings, late 40s, in the 50s as well. Project Blue Book. It was something else before Blue Book, but
yeah, right. There was Project Grudge was before that, and there was another one. There's actually a couple of them before Blue Book.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people then, the witnesses did not know how to describe what they saw. Besides maybe something luminous or triangular. That type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, the Kinross incident is really very interesting. What else have you dove off into recently? Besides,
Well, so, so, okay. So like I said, I'm obsessed with the Kinross incident. I'm also obsessed with Lake Superior. And I think, I'm not from here. I've only lived here a dozen years now. And I lived in the Rocky Mountains and lived in the Pacific Northwest. And, the majestic mountains, I love that area and I understand it. I was not ready to be blown away by the Great Lakes, especially Lake Superior. It's incredible. So how, as a writer, how do I get my mind around this hyper object that is Lake Superior and try to tell its story? And I was thinking, well, what's the best book I know about Lake Superior? And the answer to that for me is there's a local writer here named Fred Stonehouse. And he wrote the quintessential book about the Edmund Fitzgerald, and it's an incredible book. I'm trying to tell the story of Lake Superior through this Kinross incident. And it's if you look at a map of I've got a map right here of Lake Superior. If you look at a map, this happened right in the bullseye of the lake, near the Canadian line, actually inside of Canada. But yeah, I'm trying to, if you drop a pebble in a puddle, those ripples, right? The pebble here is that aircraft, and the ripples are to me the story of Lake Superior. So that's what I'm attempting here. In doing so, there was a crash in 1962 of another U.S. Air Force jet. This was an F-101 Voodoo that happened right off the shore here of the town where I live, Marquette. And again, 2 airmen disappeared, and locally, very, very few people remember or even knew about this at the time. And so I've been working with a local shipwreck hunter, and we've been going out looking for this aircraft, this jet. And, I think I thought shipwreck hunting was pretty simple and straightforward before I tried it. And it's like most interesting things, there's a lot more to it than I realized. We don't know that we found parts of the aircraft yet, but I'm sworn to secrecy, but we found something else that's quite interesting.
fantastic. Can't wait to hear about that. So is the investigation continuing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're still, the weather's really choppy on the lake right now, but when the lake calms down, we're going to get back out there. And my shipwreck hunting partner, his name is Dan Fountain, and he's found several marquee wrecks. And, he's really, people in the shipwreck world know Dan as being one of the experts in the field. And he's determined to find this aircraft. And the aircraft are they're small, and they break up when they tend to break up when they hit the water at 400 miles an hour. So it's a real challenge, but I feel like he's got a really good strategy to find it. And so we're out there spending the summer looking for that aircraft out there. Yeah.
I guess there are certain times of the year you can only do so much. Wintertime would probably be.
Yeah, in the song "The Witches of November," they start in September, and so you get good days. You get 1 or 2 good days here, but it's broken up with days where it comes in, and you're looking at. Well, it's hard to conduct sonar searches in waves that are above 2 feet, and in a small boat, that's a lot. That's plenty of waves, and the waves can get up to 30 feet out here in the fall. So yeah,
right. Yeah, Lake Superior. I looked up something on it here recently, and it was a little, I guess, tidbit of information. I believe the amount of water in Lake Superior could cover North America and South America, I believe is what they said, at a foot deep. Possibly.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Have you heard that as well?
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's the largest freshwater lake in the world, but it contains 10% of the world's fresh water. 10%. That's a lot of fresh water in one lake. It's the size of, well, you could say it's the size of Austria. I like to say it's the size of Maine. So it's yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's extremely large. We went I'll say several. It's probably been 5 or 6 years ago to St. Paul area, and then took a car and drove to Duluth.
Yeah.
And got to see Lake Superior and some of the lighthouses, which was beautiful. It was really nice. I think it was January, possibly. So but it wasn't too cold. It wasn't as cold as I thought it would be.
Nice. Nice.
That was a good trip. But and going through one of the lighthouse museums, of course, it talked about the shipwrecks, and I believe there's over 500. Is that correct?
Right. Between 500 and 600 shipwrecks up here. Yeah. Yep. And, out of that, I'm not sure how many they actually know of, but there are a lot of shipwrecks that we may have found one the other day that was just undocumented at the time.
Or are there any of the shipwrecks that stick out to you that have questions?
There's the Holy Grail and I've learned this by just hanging out with the shipwreck hunters, and they're an interesting group, an interesting subculture. And the Holy Grail right now seems to be what they call the minesweepers. And they were two French minesweeping ships that were built up in what is now the city of Thunder Bay in Ontario. And there were three of them, and they were going to transfer them to Europe. And it was a storm in the fall. It was the end of the war. World War I was over. So don't hold me to the date here, but I want to say 1919. And the three of them were headed east to the St. Lawrence River to go on to the Atlantic Ocean. And only one of them made it to the Soo Locks, which is the canal, the lock and dam where they transfer into the St. Lawrence River so they can go out to the Atlantic. And they never found the two other minesweepers, and there were over 100 sailors lost in that disappearance. And that seems to be the one that most of the shipwreck hunters want to find the most.
Right. And what you said that was 1919?
It was right after World War I. Yeah, I'm going to get in trouble with my dates here. But.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about, I know we had talked about the Bermuda Triangle just a little bit, but I was going to mention too, or ask you about the disappearance of the Cyclops. And
yeah.
It was 1917.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that ship totally disappeared with everyone on board, correct?
I believe so. I'm not expert on that case, but I believe you're right.
Right. Yeah, I think there was 200 or 300 people on board or something close to that. But I did some research on that particular vessel, and same time period. I don't know but these vessels were built the same way, but this one was very narrow compared to its length, and I just don't know how. Now, of course, I'm not an engineer by no means, but how it could stand, maybe not hurricane force weather, but rough weather in the ocean. And I'm just wondering if those minesweepers were built similar, to that.
I bet they were. They had to be narrow enough to get through the Soo Locks, so that was a limiting factor on the beam of them. Yeah,
right. Yeah, I think the length compared to the width I think it was a 10-to-1 maybe ratio or something. And I don't want to get into math, but yeah, it just did not seem like a well-built vessel, for that. But
have you heard of the Great Lakes Triangle? Speaking of the Bermuda Triangle,
I have not.
There's an old book from the 70s about it, and then there's a great episode. Leonard Nimoy, you may be familiar with the show, not just Star Trek, but he had a show called In Search Of back in the late 70s. You remember that show?
Very popular.
There's an episode on the Great Lakes Triangle that, if you have half an hour one day, I recommend watching it, but extremely interesting.
What lakes encompass the triangle, or what do they include as the triangle?
So if I remember correctly, I think they include all of the Great Lakes, portions of all of the Great Lakes. Yeah. And it's both ships and aircraft that have gone missing within the parameters of that triangle.
Right. Yeah. That's such Superior being as large as it is, and then the other lakes are not small by no means.
Right.
But that's a lot of water, and
yeah,
and of course I did not realize until I was up there how rough Lake Superior can be as far as weather and waves and navigating and so forth. So.
Mm-hmm. No, Lake Superior actually makes its own weather. You've heard of lake effect snow. we will get surprise blizzards that come off the lake. Today I was watching thunderstorms out over the lake, and we were missing them here on shore, but I was looking at the radar, and it just feeding off the water out there, and just massive thunderstorms. So
Right.
yeah, to be out there in a boat is serious business.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah. Those ships are large, and for those to be consumed by, the water or whatever caused it, I can see that.
Right.
John, let me ask you this. This is off the subject of, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I know you had mentioned about we had talked earlier, and you're diving into UFOs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me, is there anything in particular that you're looking into, or can you say?
Well, so this idea that some sort of craft swallowed up the F-89, that's what Donald Kehoe implied happened, I think, in his 1955 book, The Flying Saucer Conspiracy. I'm not sure that's what happened, but then I can't tell you what happened, right? So there's
Right.
that, and that's how you fall into these rabbit holes. I can tell you too, it's been really interesting. I went back to the 40s, like you'd mentioned before, looking at some of these historic cases, and I feel like the sort of this, if you start the modern age of the UFO, if you start it in the 40s, I feel like it began with a hoax. And are you familiar with the Maury Island incident in Washington?
I don't guess so.
I feel like that case was pretty clearly a hoax now. I'm also dealing with a hoax with the Kinross incident in 2006. And if your listeners Google this, they can find the images of what was shown. But in 2006, a fictitious organization called the Great Lakes Dive Company claimed to have found the F-89 in 600 feet of water out in the middle of the lake. And next to it was a metallic disc, 212 feet from the plane, was essentially a flying saucer that they claimed was radioactive. And there are some pixelated, what they say are sonar pictures of these two craft. It sort of angered the shipwreck community, and it angered the UFO community when they figured out it was a hoax too. But it just, to pull off a hoax of that caliber was in its own way kind of impressive.
Right. And that seems to be in each category, I guess you could say, of unexplained or mystery. You're going to have hoaxers, as Bigfoot, tons of those, UFO, of course, and others. And people, they use there's a lot of effort, in other words, put into hoaxing, but there's some others that you can look at and say there's no way possible. But some of these I have read about in the Project Blue Book era, I just don't see how they could be hoaxes, because there were multiple witnesses in a lot of cases. I read one about Carl Hart. He was a Texas Tech student, and it's the Lubbock Lights, which he was by himself when that happened. But there were other people in that area that saw the lights as well. And of course, you can tell by how they explain the lights in the articles and in the research I've done looking into it, that they seem genuine.
Right. Yeah, Mark, the cases that, one thing that research has done, it's made me very, very critical of a lot of historical cases. The ones that I scratch my head are when the Navy pilots, the jet pilots, going back to jets again, the gimbals and the Tic Tacs, these cases that are radar proven, they have a radar signature that proves that something was there. Those are hard for me to dismiss.
Right. What's your opinion, or what do you think about those? The Tic Tac videos that have come out over the recent months and last year or two?
I just tell you, if there's a group of people I tend to trust their word, it would be our military jet pilots and military radar officers and our service people. It's, if I'm going to trust somebody first, it could be them. I think it's something. Is it foreign military technology, advanced technology that we're not aware of? I don't know. but it's something. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I think I agree. I agree with what you said about the military, and because these pilots that are, you know, talking in front of Congress about this, their reputation's on the line. They have everything to lose, really.
Yeah.
Ridicule and so forth. So I seem to believe what they're saying, and the videos themselves, you just can't explain that.
Right. Right.
We had an interesting. I videoed it about 2 weeks ago. We spent some time, family vacation, close to Pensacola, Florida, and we were just west of Pensacola, probably by maybe 10 miles at the most. And we were camping, RV campsite, and close to Perdido Key or Perdido Bay. And there was an unexplained light. I called it an orb. I don't know what it was. It moved, caught our attention. And if I had to guess, maybe 500 to 600 yards away, possibly. It was above tree level and never blinked, never moved vertical or horizontal, moved laterally. It went from my right to left. Put the camera down, or my phone down at the time. I videoed it with an Android phone, and the guy with me said, "Hey, there it is again," and it had moved laterally. I can't say that hardly. Again, back to the right, and it just sat there, and pretty bright light, but just no sound and no blinking, anything. It moved back left again one more time and then disappeared. And it was the strangest thing. I probably got maybe 45 seconds to a minute of video.
Yeah.
And Pensacola has a naval base, of course.
Right.
And someone had mentioned that, and something I had, a social media platform I posted it on. But I knew they had a naval base there. And that was not a drone or any type of military aircraft of any sort that I know of. I can't explain it.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't either. Yeah.
We have also, I recorded something else probably 2 or 3 years ago. We live on 22 acres just outside of the city limits. And over the years, we have seen tons of military. We've seen personal aircraft and blimp. We live close to Auburn, Alabama, which you have Auburn University there. And on game days, sometimes you'll have aircraft like blimps, and
sure,
during the national anthem, you're going to have jets and stuff fly by, and they make the routes over our property. For whatever reason, it's been that way for I don't know how long. And we've seen military aircraft. I've seen them fly over at night with no lights on. But I had filmed something one night, videoed it on a phone. It sat there for about 45 seconds. It's changed colors, and I could not tell exactly how far it was away. It was not a lot, it was not a star, it was not a planet. I have an app to double check myself just in case I see something like that. And it didn't show anything, but it just sat there. And, I don't know what it was, but it disappeared about 3 or 4 minutes later, just gone.
Yeah.
But no explanation, so I'm not saying it's a UFO, but
right.
There's odd things and strange things that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The memorial plaque for the pilot that was flying the F-89 in the Kinross incident. A couple of years ago, I went down to Louisiana, and the memorial plaque in the family cemetery claims that he vanished while chasing a UFO. It says literally UFO on the plaque. So the family at the time, some of the family certainly believe that's what it was.
Right. That's pretty important to have that on there, as far as for them to believe or conclude themselves that that's what it was.
Yeah.
What you're saying, the radar operator saw them merge together.
Yeah.
And that's just really strange. Really, really interesting story there. So, John, I want to ask you about one thing. I know you wrote a book called The Cold Vanish, Seeking the Missing in North America's Wildlands. I wanted to ask you, this case really interests me, and I'm not sure if you know about it. The Dennis Martin case in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee, North Carolina border, I believe, is where he disappeared in 1969, I believe.
Mhm.
Do you know much about that? Or have
What I'm not an expert on that one, Mark, but what I think about in that one is that it sounds like there was a military presence in the search, or there was a military exercise going on. So you had a tremendous amount of resources regarding any kind of a search and rescue potential there, and they still couldn't come up with an answer to that.
Right. Yes, you're correct. It was military was involved, I know, in the search or somewhat in the search. And from what I gather, the response was fairly fast or
I believe so. Yes.
to
Yeah.
the, him being reported missing.
Mhm.
And I find that in some cases, that's not so. And I know you know that. It's almost like there's red tape involved in
Yeah.
getting a search party out to find someone. But yeah. I was in law enforcement for about 4.5 years, and there's no doubt they're understaffed.
Mhm.
Absolutely. The city we live in, its population's 25 or 30,000. The county's probably 100,000 or so, but you only had, it was several years ago, but you had 5 or 6 people working the city, at midnight. But if something happened, you responded as quickly as possible. But some of these cases, it just baffles me that the response time
Yeah.
and what it takes to get, canine drones or what have you to respond to some of these cases.
Right. Right. In some parts of the country, like I write about an area of Colorado where it's entirely volunteer based, and you know how that goes. If you're around, I had a sheriff tell me, people will respond and say, well, my truck won't start. I can't make it. This happened to be one of the most impoverished counties in Colorado. But yeah, there's so many variables when someone goes missing, and I feel like the world revolves around volunteerism, but that's limiting too. So
Sure, absolutely. Could you tell the listeners about the proceeds that of the sale of the book and what it goes to?
that absolutely, yeah. So I earmark 20% of any proceeds to go to the John Francis Foundation, and that's an outfit based in Stillwater, Minnesota. And what they do is like we were saying, when the official search and rescue operations are over, and they call the dogs and send the helicopters home, the John Francis Foundation can sometimes step in and help families who are burdened with what some psychologists call ambiguous loss, and it's the hardest thing that a human can go through is losing a loved one but not knowing how or the details of it. And so John Francis Foundation steps in with educational support. They do plan and coordinate some cold case searches for families' loved ones, and without them, there's just often a vacuum. There's just no other support. So it's very modest what I can send their way, but I think it's a great cause.
Absolutely. It's very important to have the volunteers. I had a gentleman on maybe a month or so ago. His name is Tanner Hoskins. He has the Pacific Northwest Missing Persons Project, and it's a nonprofit, and they help out with missing people that, in the Oregon, Washington area. And it's really a neat thing.
Yeah, that's great. I'll look them up.
Yeah. John, typically at the end of each episode, we do a rapid fire Q&A. I'll ask you 3 questions, and it's just the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Serious. All right. You ready?
I don't know, but we'll give it a try.
All right. Number 1, your favorite summer hobby or activity?
Fishing.
Fishing. Okay. What do you fish for?
Well, right here it's lake trout. So I run summer classes on an island called Granite Island here in Lake Superior. And so it's a very small island and a very big lake. And we spend a lot of time fishing off the granite. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I remember growing up, I used to love to fish when I was young. And I guess it's muskie. They're up there as well, and pike.
Yep.
Is that right? Or the
Yep.
walleye, possibly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Walleye is very good to eat.
Delicious.
Yes, one of my favorite freshwater fish. All right, number 2, favorite movie.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Okay, John Travolta and
Yep.
Samuel Jackson. Yeah.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Good one. All right, last one. Favorite TV show related to mystery, paranormal, or anything like that?
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I have not seen that in quite some time.
Yeah, I've got the box set, so I've got all of them.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I guess probably mine or one of mine would be Monsters and Mysteries, Destination America. It used to be on the Destination America channel.
Yeah.
But John, I have really enjoyed you coming on the show. I appreciate you taking your time. Yeah.
Mark, it's a pleasure, and I'm flattered to have been asked, and I appreciate what you do, and hope to come chat with you again sometime.
Yeah, I would love to have you back on and let us know if you had any more information into your investigation and your research.
I'll be able to talk about what we found soon, I think. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, just we'll stay in touch. And like I said, I really do appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule and coming on the show.
Absolutely, Mark.
And for the listeners, if you've had an encounter, something unexplained, or something strange, just send us an email at the Cryptid Crew Podcast at gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and God bless.